Hello world, I'm Max. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you that this content is meant to be consumed in series from the beginning. See episode 0 and each segment appended for all applicable terms and disclosures. Appended segments can be identified by their title prefix, SCP.0. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. It's a beautiful day, a little chilly still. Health status, I feel great. My phone just congratulated me on like 13 of 14 days of perfect sleep. And good REM cycles. I'm doing the suggestion from Andrew Huberman that you not have your coffee. I do 1 cup of coffee a day. And I would do it right when I woke up, and now I'm waiting an hour and trying to get some sunlight, natural sunlight, before I'll have any coffee. And, I'm not real sure whether it's doing anything. I think I was already feeling pretty well rested and like I was getting good sleep cycles. But I'm doing it anyways, and I still feel great, so I'll keep doing it. Maybe there's something to it. Anywho, I think I'm going to do some reads from Bitch Be Cool over the last couple days. There's a couple good conversations about, there's one on sort of dogmatic thinking, religion, religion versus, I'll read it. And then I think it'll make more sense. But I think it was a really good conversation between me and friend B. And then there's a good one about COVID that's mostly me and friend B again that I want to follow up with. So it starts January 5, day before yesterday. I said in chat, Andy Dufresne was a tall drink of water. And I linked an article that Tim Robbins says COVID has become a new religion. It's dogmatic. It's absolute. I think he was on Russell Brand. And that was his take. I think I meant that to be sort of a lightning brand. I didn't actually read the article. I did that thing I'm always so critical of everybody else doing, of just sort of sizing up, judging the content by the title heading. Still, it drove the conversation in an interesting, productive way, I think, that I thought it would. And in this case, I'm pretty sure I got my estimates right, or prediction on that content. Anyways, friend B replies to that article, I think people misunderstand what religion is frequently, and also misunderstand infectious diseases. I respond, what do you think religion is? Is it specifically something to do with spiritual woo-woo stuff? He replies, a system of belief in a supernatural phenomenon with all the extra trimmings. And I reply, so there has to be some supernatural component, you're saying. Something like a vegan is far more credible than, say, a Christian. He replies, religion is religion. There's a supernatural power, a profit motive, a hierarchy, promise of an afterlife. I respond, but from first principles, there isn't common thread you can draw from the vegan, the Christian, the Scientologist, the flat earther, etc. He responds, flat earthers and vegans are not a religion. I respond, I don't know, I've known a few vegans, ... Friend B says, vegans can be evangelical, for a lack of a better word, but they don't constitute a religion. Outside commentary now, I'll say I disagree with that take. I think, I think I'll just stick to the script for now. Add my thoughts afterwards. He said, vegans can be evangelical, for lack of a better word, but they don't constitute a religion. And I respond, I'd argue that there are a few super fundamental components that are perfectly shared among all these things. Yes, an irrational belief, he replies. I say, the rationality of a thing is purely subjective. He responds, nah. I reply, your rational conviction that cow is yummy is deeply irrational to my first wives. It's one of her most deeply held convictions that you are wrong. And in fact, committing real horrible crime when you purchase factory meat, smoke it into fucking deliciousness, and consume it. Who gets to decide who's right? You? Why not her? He responds, it's not that the cow is tasty or whatever, but vegans make claims that aren't necessarily true, and that makes them irrational. I reply, again, that assumes you have some sort of higher authority. Why do you win that argument by default? Because there are more people that agree with your take than hers? He responds, in the case of vegans, there isn't so much of an argument to be won. I respond, so rational and irrational is just a function of whose idea has the most votes? He says, not at all. Quite the opposite. Count of noses is a poor indicator of what is true and isn't. I respond, seems like it is to me. I lived with her for 14 years. She hasn't had meat since she was 4 years old. Eating meat is like eating human to her. He responds, and that's fine. But in the case of vegans, the general idea of humans aren't fit to eat meat and that vegan nutrition could scale for everyone is a rational thought. What's annoying about them is how evangelical they can get. And yet, still not a religion. Smiley face, emoticon. I say, why is human meat not okay to eat? He responds, several reasons. I say, I think it meets your criteria. He says, rarely ever does a species eat their own food. Promoting that as okay is very problematic, to put it mildly. For any human society, and humans being semi-carnivores, it probably doesn't taste very good. I respond, it would boggle your mind how many cannibalistic species there are out there, especially if you count the really small ones. He responds, yeah, maybe the small ones, stuff that's little more than a fancy state machine. But higher level animals, but forget animals, there's been examples of cannibalistic human societies, just not that many. I respond, my point was just to make a distinction that the reasons we don't eat humans are more religious than as a function of any evolutionary driver. He responds, it's a problem because human societies tend to offer their members some base level of things that you'll be safe from. I don't see any connections to religion there. I say, It creates social unrest at our level of the cognitive ladder. If humans go around eating each other, religion is just more than one human agreeing on something they observe at its core. That is what I think religion is. It's just an agreement among two or more nodes on an objective truth, a subjective truth. Let's see. So we constructed social stigma, useful sets of shared principles. He responds, but that really isn't religion at all. I say, I'd argue it's absolutely religion. He responds, how? Its laws for social order existed outside and before any religion we can recognize today. It's like arguing marriage is a religious concept, which it 100% isn't. Existed way before any of the desert god dogmas we know today. I respond, a shared belief system that's been propagated throughout history, that's a sticky idea in every person, regardless of local governance. We have successfully decided as a group to agree not to eat each other because it creates problems socially. And we all teach that pretty universally. He responds, okay, but that still isn't religion, as a 100% atheistic society would also have same or similar laws. I respond, because all atheists think alike? He says, no, because any surviving human society had to create some rules, some basic rules that would keep their people at least feeling safe. Relative success of implementing those rules aside. I respond, what if somebody in the group claimed you were being religious for expressing that view? Well, then I'd throw a big fat dictionary at their head and tell them to start reading. Words and their meaning matter, especially in an age where assholes admit irregardless into the English language. My friend really has a deep respect for vocabulary, and he's not a native-born English speaker, and I've always liked that about him. He's a word Nazi, not in the horrible way. I respond, I don't mean to talk in circles here. I'm only trying to illustrate the idea that religion, when you look at it from first principles, is just more than one human agreeing on something. He responds, we have many words in the English language. Religion has a specific meaning. Just because you say, I'm religious about XYZ, doesn't mean XYZ is religion. I respond, people get too hung up on the spiritual agreement groups. He says, I could possibly be dogmatic about a non-religious topic, but I can't be religious about it. I said, the groups where people get together and decide to all agree on a set of answers to stuff like who made us and what is this all for. He says, don't follow. Is any form of organization or lawmaking a religion now? Sorry, I couldn't learn to read answers to stuff like who made us and what is it for. Science tries to answer those questions, and science isn't religion. Religion has tried to answer those questions and failed miserably for millennia. I respond, Webster would tell you religion means the belief in and worship of superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. Ideas about the relationship between science and religion. He replies, looks like Webster agrees with me, or the other way around, even. Smiley face. I respond, I disagree with you and Webster. In my view, religion and dogmatism are synonymous. He says, you are free to disagree. I said, I am. Joy emoticon. He says, but you're also wrong. And I said, to me it all just looks like people agreeing with each other about something. He says, okay, you want to abstract. Oh, I just got reset. Timeout. They're talking and it's pushing it around. Okay. I said, I disagree with you and Webster. In my view, religion and dogmatism are synonymous. He says, you are free to disagree. I said, I am. But, and then he says, but you're also wrong. I said, to me it all just looks like people agreeing with each other about something. He says, okay, you want to abstract something out, then call the abstraction a name. For a lower level specific manifestation, it would be like me calling all cars an F-150. I respond, or I continue my thought. At this point, I think we're kind of asynchronous here. And then, because they get enough people to agree with their take, they start to make a case that their views are more right than the people who disagree with them. He says, just because religion is a form of organization, that doesn't mean all forms of organization are religion. Then I linked the TED Talk that Donald Hoffman did. And I said, well, here's a well-respected PhD type expressing an opinion I subscribe to. I said, when you realize this is what the universe is, my definition for religion starts making a lot of sense. I'm not sure if that's true. I just could... I didn't want to get bogged down in a semantics discussion. Neither did he, apparently, because he replies, we're arguing about semantics here, mostly, which is still important to me because I place a high value on the language we use. Morning. I replied, so we are. Sure we are. We've been doing it for 20 years, damn near. Wink emoticon. I said, I gotta go walk. We'll chat later. So then friend A links an article about something about fitness. Time magazine dragged for claiming the act of exercising reinforces white supremacy. I'm not interested in, I think arguments, racial arguments are uninteresting, mostly. I mean, I kind of understand the dynamics of it, but I think we need to grow up and just realize we're all exactly the same thing. Just very... the people that have been wronged need to forgive the wrongers, and we all need to agree together not to do that kind of shit or make those distinctions anymore. They're super unhealthy. So I don't usually participate in any of the conversations about that stuff. I'm just waiting for everybody to catch up with me in thought. Anyways, I'll skip by that. Friend B says, some 6-year-old shot a teacher in Virginia. That's got to be some sort of record. I said, hey, friend B, have you... I didn't really want to talk about that either. Have you reviewed any of Ed Dowd's work on the vaccine? Seems pretty compelling as I review it. Specifically around excess mortality and accidental death. insurance payout peaks, temporal events in statistics. And then I linked this video that came up in my feed. I said the first 30 minutes of this is pretty good TLDR if the reading sounds too intolerable. So I explore, I don't actually want to talk about this content. I'm wanting to have a different conversation, and it'll make sense later on down. So he replies to that. I have no clue who that guy is, but excess mortality among healthy people, that sounds bogus straight off the bat. You know, we've had this thing for the last 3 years causing serious excess mortality called COVID. He then links fact check, no evidence that people aged 25 to 44 experienced an 84% increase, ... Social media users are sharing the false claim that people age 25 to 44 in the United States experienced an 84% increase in excess mortality due to COVID-19 vaccine rollout. He says, at a minimum, I do not see that he discloses at all how he got to that conclusion from available data. Now remember, this conversation all happened quick, so neither of us are really validating any of the content. I think this is a real problem, the way we argue things these days. We will link evidence that we think supports our argument, but then the participant in the debate that we're arguing with won't read it, and we won't read theirs. It's madness. He says, at a minimum, I do not see that he discloses at all how he got that conclusion from available data. It seems like typical COVID gaslighting. If his hypothesis were true, COVID itself would be mostly harmless, and the vaccine, which has been administered in the hundreds of millions, is very dangerous. Does that make any sense? I replied, yeah, kinda. Sweat smile emoji. He says, really? I said, yeah, I mean, I've had COVID. It was nothing like what I experienced a few days after the second booster. That's true. I had actually diagnosed, atrial fibrillation for the first time in life for like 12 to 14 hours across 2 sessions, and it scared the shit out of me. He says, on one hand, you have a fairly deadly virus, and on the other hand, you have a vaccine that, if indeed dangerous, like claimed, would cause a worldwide decimation. And you ask where excess mortality is coming from. I've been following the anti-vaccine movement for over 20 years, since Andrew Wakefield started his spiel. Patterns are quickly recognizable. I respond, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm sort of anti-mRNA COVID vaccine. Though I think, I think, I don't know, that didn't make sense. 28 days in a lab, and it's good for 5 billion people. That was me taking something from a video without any due diligence and getting it wrong. He points out it was like 10 years of development. In the case of this Ed Dowd, he's making big claims and not backing up his data. I respond, nah, I don't buy it. This tech is entirely different than like a polio vaccine. Oh, I said, nah, I don't buy it. This tech is entirely different than like a polio vaccine. This is where he corrects me, rightly. 28 days, that's total bullshit. At the time of the first COVID mRNA vaccine deployment, that technology had been in use for over a decade and deemed very safe. I say the death claims were fact-checked. He says, and yet Reuters shot holes in the claims with ease. How did he measure that excess mortality is really from the vaccine? He is turning a quick buck on anti-vax sentiment, and you can tell by where he promotes the book. Steve Bannon, among others. And then he links Reuters fact check of the article. Let's see. Fact check, COVID-19 vaccines are not increasing child mortality. And I did not read this article, of course, because of said sickness. Actually, for other reasons I'll cover later. Anyways, he'll go on. The expose. Fake story wrongly citing the British ONS. ONS, in turn, says there is no record of anyone under 35 dying because of COVID-19 vaccinations. These stories, almost exact ones, are far older than the COVID vaccine. Same shit was said about every childhood vaccine for a few decades now, and especially since Andrew Wakefield. I reply, So at this point, it occurs to me that I really don't want to argue about this. I don't actually care much about COVID. But I did want to have an important conversation with my friend that's sort of COVID related. So I respond, yeah, I am biased on this by my anecdotal experience, if I'm honest. I really haven't done gobs of research on all this, and I don't want to go spend hours on the research. He replies, I think he's continuing his thought. Hang on, it's a bit noisy. All right. He goes on, which isn't valuable in a scientific context. And he links another article to COVID-19 vaccination has substantially altered the course of the pandemic, saving tens of millions of lives globally. However, inadequate access to vaccines in low-income countries has limited the impact in these settings, reinforcing the need for global vaccine equity and coverage. He says peer-reviewed evidence from real medical sources only show a very significant excess mortality reduction in vaccinated populations. So yeah, Ed Dowd is just another COVID grifter. Quick buck from a captive audience. Fuck, I should have done something like that. He doesn't mean it. He's got too many morals. I said, still, people's conviction in support of vaccines seems a bit scary to me. It feels like dogma. Joy emoticon. He says, well, compared to the dangers of COVID, not a difficult decision at all. And then I reply, I'm watching a guy just rip into all of Dowd's stuff now. He says, in a few years in, data shows an impressive safety and effectiveness associated with the vaccine, but the anti-vax rhetoric is stronger, and vaccination rates are way down. I reply, I feel like COVID was a flu. It wasn't that scary. He says, you feel? I said, and I had it worse than anybody I know. He says, and all the data gathered, the world round is for the birds? I said, yes, friend B, I actually had it. What you feel about COVID is conjecture. Raffle emoticon. He responds, I don't have to contract AIDS to have an opinion on it, or to draw conclusions from all the research done on it. I said, when you get it, finally, you're going to be like, I was freaking out about this. He responds, dude, hundreds of people are dying from it every day in the US alone. How it goes for me is a little irrelevant in the grand scope of things. I respond, thousands are dying every day from smoking and eating too much sugar. He responds, but those are not infectious diseases. Maybe if such an easygoing attitude was popular right after 9/11, when only 3,000 died, we never would have been drawn into those awful wars. I respond, exactly. That's an important point I've liked to make a lot of times. Lots of humans that are scared together make dumb decisions, I think. He responds, I had quite a few discussions with anti-vaxxers over the years. Despite tons of good data and arguments, I never accomplished anything. If that bug has bit you, there is nothing I can say or do. That's your lot in life now. And I respond with a gif that says, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy, from the last of the horrible Star Wars remakes. Sorry, George Lucas, I didn't like the prequel. He responds, you do believe a lot of grifters, though. I said, but I won't get any more of those COVID ones until a version of COVID shows up that actually scares me. I don't just believe a lot of grifters, dude. I just actually think it's useful to have an open mind and have thoughtful debate. I'll never be comfortable with this whole filtering thing that you do. He responds, not saying you should. Get a vaccine or do filtering. Smiley face, and he does an LOL. And then I do a joy emoticon and the shaka. He says, you can't have an open debate with grifters. They misuse bad data and arguments on the spot. And you're left holding your dick without the ability to research them back into the cave they came from. I respond, you can have an open debate with anyone, even people with a lot of wacky ideas you don't subscribe to, can expose you to useful information from time to time. I feel like I'm fairly resilient. He responds with I can't remember this woman's name. She's the hunt. What is it? The hunting game. It's just a gift that says, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." He says, "Hey, man, you do you." This is where I responded with like my favorite emoji, that is, what's his name from Holes saying magic. And it looks like he's at a telethon with a unicorn shirt on. He responds, I think the most interesting thing about COVID has been the disinformation wave. It truly is fascinating to watch sometimes. But some shameless fucks are making bank off the true believers, same as ever was. I respond, jerks. Well, I must sleep now. He says good night. Now, friend A this morning pipes up. I had COVID again this past week. I think that makes 4. Still kicking. Friend B replies, that settles it, it's harmless. Fuck the deep state for lying to us. Friend A says, I'm not saying that, just that I had it again and symptoms were way weird this time. I responded, yeah, my ex-wife just had it too this week. I don't know if my kiddo or I had it. We did just have something, but it felt like the good old-fashioned cold. Lots more snot than COVID. Joy emoticon. Friend A says, didn't even think COVID, but took a home test just for the hell of it. I responded, I'm sure my cold was quite a bit rougher. He replies, friend A replies, I had 0 respiratory issues, no congestion, just a bad headache for 1 day, 3 days of insomnia, and then my feet swelled up really bad for 2 days. I replied, ooh, that's a weird one. Haven't heard of that one yet. Friend A says, I'm guessing my feet swelling was some kind of immune response. It was the worst part. Friend B says, found something else about Ed Dowd, Max. And it's an article on simonandschuster.com, cause unknown, Ed Dowd, children's health defense, something like that. He says, look at the second name on the book cover. I didn't even look. I respond, yeah, I saw a bunch of stuff ripping him apart pretty quick after I asked you about him, but I decided not to put any further time into studying it. I think I was more interested in what about that content got me to suddenly pay attention to COVID for the first time in a long while. And I think it's because part of me would like his case to be proved right, because it fits with my anecdotal experience with COVID and the vaccine. Interesting observation to make about self, but now ready to quickly walk away from the subject again. Joy emoticon. Right now I'm looking for this awesome shot of my ex-wife's foot that I took while she was near the end of pregnancy. Would have been awesome to respond to friend A's foot swole story with it. Fuck, I wish my picture library was labeled. When I find it, I'm going to link it. Joy emoticon. Friend B says, this is not a foot fetish channel. Wink emoticon. Friend A says, my foot modeling career is over. I respond, man, you ain't kidding. When you see this picture, you'll never look at a foot the same way again. Friend B says, maybe you shouldn't link it. I said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. The image will haunt you. Man, I lost the really good one that really displays the size and scale better. Friend B says, don't do it, Max. And then I did it. I said, her ankle here is definitely bigger than my knee. And then I link another picture that has her little French bulldog in the background. And I said, and her dog. Did it look like that, friend A? Friend B links a picture of Sasquatch. Friend A says, mine was worse. I couldn't wear shoes. No ankle swelling, though. And we're all caught up. So, I really enjoyed, I don't know why, I feel like, I feel like that's good content to share. And at some point I'll just export all of those conversations to feed my state seed. But I think it's also interesting to kind of read them and give commentary, because then I can add in my little thoughts and observations. I think this is kind of, if you're on a growth trajectory and you're noticing your friends on a growth trajectory and sort of like what I'd call wisdom, higher order thought, I think these conversations, I just think you have to be really careful about how you do it. Respect their anonymity and censor jokes that, that very sensitive, easily triggered society won't understand if they show up. because conversation shared in a private way. I don't know. I think that's all really logical if you think about it. And but I'm really trying to capture like how my thought evolved, and so that little chat group I think is really useful for communicating that, for describing it. 5-10 years ago, those conversations would have gone so much differently. I would have engaged with my friends in a way that was like quite a bit more hostile. We would have spent time reading articles that we don't really give a shit about, defending people that are as deeply imperfect as we are, and trying to make their cases work. And then like friend B would find evidence that I hadn't done my research properly. I think the whole thing is just a big needless conflict amongst people who care about each other. This thing we do where we argue politics and I don't know, argue the facts surrounded around murky subjects that have us and other people rightly concerned, like COVID, vaccines, things happening in the government. It's like I don't know, it's a powerful unlock for me to realize that I don't want to participate in that anymore, and I want to give that to everybody else. I think there's a way you can share ideas and explore them, like why you think about them, in more productive ways with your closest friends and family. I think you can, if you have an open mind to their opinions and not try and dunk on each other all the time. Like, I really don't want to ever dunk on my friends. I don't care anymore if I'm right. It was interesting, even though I think I've made a lot of internal progress on how I think about things like that. I still sort of, like, I wanted to have a conversation about something, and I wanted, like, it was the really interesting observation I think I was having in all of that was that I got pulled into watching something through the YouTube algorithm that I sat through like 30 minutes on a topic I just don't give a shit about anymore, COVID and the vaccines. And I think that was from some tiny part of ego that I don't really want to admit is still there, that kind of wanted to be right about something. Or I don't think that's true. It's more like that part of you is always there, but you can choose to weight its value in how you understand the world and how you act upon things. Like, you can, those notions will always occur to you. It's really natural, I think, to want to be sort of right, or to, if there's something that's in some part of your mind bothering you that you want to explore and talk through with your friends, I think you can do it. You can still have those conversations and deeply respect their opinions on them. I am kind of trying to subtly push friend B into a place where he's not as fearful of COVID overall. And just because I'd like him to get to return to living sort of the normal life and not letting it eat up all of his compute and building up resentments towards people he sees around him that don't really that don't share his views. I mean, that is a real ambition I have in talking with him about those things. But it's a difficult dance because I have to respect that he still passionately thinks about it. So I don't want to dismiss his passionate concern on a topic that I don't care about. Because that's really harmful to my credibility with him. And it hurts anybody's feelings to be treated that way. And I really don't want to hurt his feelings. I want to just show him that it's safe to go to restaurants and stuff again 3 years after COVID. And I'd like to see him not be so mad at everybody who's like not wearing a mask around him or not vaxxing when he decides to. I think I understand his motivations and where he's coming from. I want to respect them, but this is important growth I want to try and steer him toward. And I hope he understands that it just comes from a place of love for my friend. Let's see. So that's the conversation about arguing scary shit with your buddies. And I also want to cover that first bit on dogma and religion being synonyms, and the whole first principles take I have on religion, trying to make a distinction or attach the word religion to so for me, religion is really just like I said, two or more humans agreeing to the same set of answers for difficult questions that it's hard for us to answer. What are we? Who made us? Why am I here? Who made the person that made us? Those kind of things. To me, that's what all religion is. It's sort of agreeing to the same story or the same solution to those problems. And I think it's useful to think about it in that context, because the way my friend thinks about it, the defining religion as belief in the supernatural means it's kind of there's an arrogance in the Webster's dictionary definition of it. Now that I've learned to view the world and what we are so much differently, I think there's kind of a thinly veiled accusation of ignorance, and just in that one small sentence that Webster has for religion, just saying it's supernatural means, I feel like to write that sentence you have to be sort of an atheist. Or you have to, maybe that's not true, maybe I'm not sure. I'll probably ponder that a bit further. But I really, as I begin to think about the world through like Donald Hoffman, Yoshibak, these guys, the way they've informed my opinion about the universe and how it works, science starts to feel like an important tool set. It's very useful for developing a more granular, highly detailed understanding of properties of how the universe works, or how we, I guess, the shared state that we all live in and how we interpret it. But it seems deeply imperfect to me also. It feels a bit like, good morning. How do I want to say it? Again, there's this kind of arrogance and this holier than thou implication that I recognize in myself now, later in life, and people who subscribe to atheistic views and science is right always, everything else is wrong. There's a dogmatism there that feels a lot like religion to me. It's maybe the mechanics of how science and the 21st century atheist, it could be the rule system that they've all subscribed to and employ to define their understanding of the universe, how all this works, agreeing that there are no answers to some questions. It still looks a lot to me like religion. It looks like a bunch of humans getting together and agreeing on a set of values or principles or observations about what this experience is and how it all works. And the sort of it feels like arrogance to me. It feels like a whole lot of our religion's right and yours is wrong, and there's a disrespect there or a contempt that is being pushed on everybody who disagrees. And nowadays, I think how we all view these things independently is the most beautiful thing about us, and it's the reason why you'd set up a thing that has enough compute and well thought out architecture to drive this experience. Like the reason to do it is to grow all that beautiful variability. So when I look objectively at how the team I used to play on makes these observations with such certainty and high conviction that they're right and everybody else is wrong, if it looks arrogant to me. It looks like deeply disrespectful to their peer humans. So it's a thing I notice in myself as I've come to this kind of higher order understanding of universe and self, that I'm kind of most critical of all the teams I used to subscribe to. I'm in politics. I'm kind of these days I'm more critical of the liberal left than any other party. I'm more critical of the atheist scientist, because up until very recently, I think that's how I defined myself, and I feel a bit betrayed. Not truly. I mean, when I think through it, I don't feel betrayed at all. All of it makes sense. It's all very necessary stuff that we all do that's easily for me to explain and understand. But there's still that part of me that I'm not always absolutely in control of, that wants to be like, hey, you jerks think you're so right. And you're being jerks to everybody else, and you need to cool it. Because I think that some of it is I'm calling myself out. I'm being critical of my younger self there. I think that's natural. It's okay. And I think that's part of the healing process. But I think as you go through it, you just got to be kind of easy on yourself, easy on them, and everything's going to be all right. All right. I think that's enough about that. Housekeeping, is there anything else I want to cover today? I don't think so. I'm right at the end of THC fast. I'm about 16, 17 days in. So tonight, when my kiddo goes back to her mom's, it's going to be time. I think today I'm going to do, I kind of like, so I did, what did I do? The last 3 times I've come, because this is like magic hour. When you come off fast, really, like let's talk about interval training for a bit, because I'm about to switch intervals. Something I noticed as I've built out this whole protocol for doing it, is the best, most creative insights, some of the most fun experiences, not fun, informative, like just purely creative, have come from the day, the first like day or two of tuning the knob back the other way. I feel like in that space you can kind of still access high band and low band at the same time. And I feel like that's where, Hey Jude and all these, really cool, this is where art lives. So I get excited for it. I think work gets done in fine-tuning the knob to high or low, but magic exists right as you roll the knob over to the other frequency. That's where it gets really fun. So I'm excited. Today, I think what I'm going to do, so in the last 2 intervals, what I did is, while I was in Lisbon, I took just a regular, strong, I think I took 2 big vape hits off the sativa vape, and sat back and did capture for like 2 hours while I was looking out the window of a beautiful, strange city I'd never been in. That was such a cool setting to do that in. Then just this last time, what I did is I had 20 milligrams of brownie. I'm not sure the mixed sativa indica that it was. But I remember, I loved the content I got out of that. Today, I think what I'm going to do is a bong rip, like of the strong stuff. I'm going to go for like basically psychedelic experience, like strong psychedelic experience, as strong as you can get with THC. So what that'll look like is, let's see, a couple of the strains I grew, Gorilla Glue, and I think it's called Super Silver. I have like 3 brands of pretty high THC flower, and I'll use a bong to deliver it. Just a whole bowl's worth of flour. And then I'm going to give some thought right now to a little bit of intention, like around, I think I'll probably just watch YouTube, go through my feed. I think I want to watch some of the stuff I've been doing lately. Sabine Hassan, sorry, Sabine. She does a great for dummies version of quantum mechanics, high energy physics, all this stuff, and I like it. I'm going to watch the one that she has on theory of relativity. I think I'll watch some of that. What I'm trying to get my subconscious cranking on is how all of these really important problems in physics, like how I can wrap a theory around, or how I can design a simulation that would function very similar, that would have a lot of the same properties that we see in these theories, and use that to kind of make more progress on my theory of everything. And let's see. I might listen to some of my content. That's another idea. I need to keep doing this review of unlabeled or described state copy captures. So I'll probably listen to episode 13 and try to do commentary. Like I'll do post commentary and capture it. Maybe episode 13 and 14. Sometimes that takes me down kind of a bad trip, because I think I'm overly critical of how I sound to the herd. But I in this really well-fasted state, high band attuned place where I am, I don't give a shit about any of that. It's difficult because strong THC will let you really put your really share others' perceptions. Like you can try on somebody else's eyes and ears for a moment in time in a really compelling way, and that can be a little disturbing, but fun too if you understand what it is. So I'll do that. My THC protocol is I almost never let myself do it, have it in my system around while I'm, especially if I'm on my own, with my kid. I've done it very little in big social environments where I don't want to drink, and my girlfriend will drive. Don't worry, I'm a responsible parent. It's the thing I think is most important. Or it's the thing I judge myself the most for. So, yeah, I have basically I'll be on my own for the next 3 days, and that's a good time. So, to explore low band. Let's see. I think that's all I have to say today. I'm going to go ahead and start Ep 13 now, listening to it. To anybody listening, you're the coolest.